Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And today we're going to be discussing Chapter 7 from The History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent.
History of Video
the
Games.
Ultimate History of Video Games.
By Stephen L. Kent. I
It's
always
only
throw his
$5
L
on
in there,
Amazon.
too, because what about other Stephen Kents? I don't want to get confused.
That's true. Stephen L. Kent.
That's right.
Yep.
So let's just dive right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it actually started today with, this is going to start the home console idea of Atari. This is where it all began. And Harold Lee was an engineer at Atari, and he proposed a device that would let people play Pong at home.
Shut up. Pong is only for the arcade,
I
for
know.
bars.
It's crazy.
Wow.
But here's the thing about this, is it was actually really good timing for Harold Lee to say this. I don't know if he did this intentionally or not, because the Magnavox Odyssey was actually at the end of its life cycle.
So this was like a couple of years in. It was feeling kind of old.
Yeah, it was like the sales were down. Like its heyday has ended.
It's sort of run its course.
Yeah. So they decided to use the same basic digital technology in their coin-op games, but use it for a home console. So they did a chip prototype. They did like the logic design during the day, and then Al Alcorn's wife would wire wrap at home, which I don't know what that means. I'm guessing it means like organize the insides of the console.
That sounds right. I feel like I should know what wire wrap means, but I don't.
I feel like it's like wire management. You know, this would be a great thing. If you know what wire wrap means, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, and we will talk about it on the air, and you'll give us a little something.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah. So that's we have an email now, so you could email us to our Gmail account. And Harold would lay out the chip design on his computer at night to save the company money. Like, this is one of those things where they were working on this, but I don't know if it was entirely on the books at Atari. Like, I think they were kind of working on it as a side project, because this is kind of the love of the game thing, you know? Mm-hmm. All these people just loved making video game stuff. They originally named it Darlene, after an attractive employee, because we're still in that age where it's weird, you know.
That's not okay.
It's not okay. It's not okay. But the finished product was called Home Pong.
Man, it must have just sold like gangbusters.
Well, yeah, it was actually cheaper for them to produce than the Magnavox Odyssey, because the price of digital, it was way simpler, I think, than the Magnavox Odyssey, but it only played one game. And it looked sharper than the Magnavox Odyssey, and it had one knob on the paddle, which was the first time that happened.
Because the Odyssey had two, right?
Yeah, the Odyssey had two, so it could spin the ball.
Oh, so no extra spin on Home Pong?
No extra spin on Home Pong. But it did have that thing where it would speed up, you know, as you'd go.
Yeah.
So I think that was a pretty cool feature. The other thing is Home Pong just played Home Pong. They didn't do any other games, because the Magnavox Odyssey had 12 games.
And they were all really just variations of Pong.
Yeah, really. And they were all just like, it was one of those things where you'd put it in and it would be like a cartridge, but really would just link the board in a different way to change the game. We talked about that last episode.
And they had overlays you could put on the TV to like, oh, it's a hockey rink now.
Yeah.
It's a tennis court.
Which I really like. I really like that as a thing. Bushnell saw the prototype, though, immediately and decided to order chips for it. Like, he didn't even know how he was going to market it yet. He just wanted it to get made as fast as possible. But the problem was it was too expensive for a toy store.
Oh, because toy stores are trying to sell things not to kids, but you got to convince the parents, right? And if something is really expensive, they're not going to want to get it for their kid.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not going to want to. They're not going to want to pay for it. Like, the thought was, like, he actually told one buyer of a toy store told Bushnell that nothing in the store should cost more than $29 unless it was a bicycle.
Wow.
Yeah,
and that's $29 in 74, $73.
Yeah, which is not a lot of money. Which you know, is a lot. It's not a lot of money to us now, but then it was like,
it's probably still under $100.
Yeah, that's true. We could have done that conversion for that. Yeah, it's not worth it. Eventually, Gene Lipkin, though, went to Sears. And while they initially said no, he convinced them to sell Home Pong in the sporting goods department.
Oh, because it was like tennis at home.
Yeah, in the wintertime, people didn't buy basketballs or baseballs anymore. They usually buy ping pong tables or pool tables, but why not just have that on your TV and save a lot of space in your room? That's kind of how they decided to market it at first.
Yep. Sears used to be, well, they probably still are. I haven't been to a Sears in years, but they used to be like, they would have all kinds of electronics and like cool stuff. Like I've bought computers there. I don't even know if they sell computers anymore.
I don't know. The last time I went to Sears was, I think, here in Burbank, California, like a year ago. And I went to go buy a Craftsman drill, and I bought the drill. And then a month later, they're like, we're not going to just sell Craftsman at Sears anymore. We're opening up the market, because it used to be Craftsman was the Sears only brand. And it was actually a pretty good brand. And now they were like, we're losing money. We could sell these on Amazon. And I think that's what Sears used to be a huge thing. Because I remember there was a Brady Bunch episode where they went to Sears and they're like, kids, we're going to Sears. And all the kids were like, yay!
We should do a whole episode on Sears.
Yeah, right? We could. The history of Sears. Do you want to talk about Tom Quinn, the Sears executive?
Yeah, so he wanted them to sign an exclusive contract, but Gene Lipkin was like, nah, I don't want to narrow the market here. But because Gene still thought that they wanted to get this stuff in toy stores as well, because the market was really kids.
Yeah.
Right? Getting it in the Sears sporting goods aisle was like a way to get it somewhere, but he didn't want to narrow himself there too much.
Yeah,
so.
They were trying to really market it as like a game, you know? So I thought this Toy Expo thing was pretty interesting.
Oh, what's the Toy Expo thing?
So they wanted it to still be a toy for kids, so they decided to go to the 1975 Toy Expo, but they didn't understand how the Toy Expo works. So Atari had a booth, and they had buyers come by, and they were very interested in the product, but they didn't understand that at Toy Expos, all of the deals go on in private rooms of hotels, like where they actually demo the product and they sell it there. They don't sell it on the toy room floor.
Oh, so it's like you gotta set up time and meet with somebody, and then you like bring your briefcase to the hotel room. And you're like, check out my sweet home Pong.
Yeah,
you want to buy 100,000 of them?
Yeah, they have a trench coat on and it's really sketchy. Like, hey, look at this. Yeah, it was one of those things where they actually just lied. And I think Tom Quinn came over to the booth at the Toy Expo, and they're like, how's it going? And they're like, oh, it's going great. It's going really good. And just lying through their teeth because they were not doing well at all. Eventually, though, after the Toy Expo, they did call Tom Quinn, and they set up a meeting at the Sears Tower in Chicago to show off Home Pong, because they're like, we just got to sell it to someone at this point. And during the presentation, the tower itself used an antenna on channel 3, which some reason blocked the signal of Home Pong, so it didn't work. So they're trying out this product to executives and showing it to them, and Home Pong didn't work. So Al Alcorn had to take apart the machine at the meeting and change the channel to channel 4 to get it to work. And so he just really quickly opened it up, changed some wires around, put it back together, and it worked again. And he's like, I had to change. It was blocking the signal. I thought that was pretty funny.
It was like, wait a minute, I can fix this. Hold on.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is great, I guess.
I mean, give props to Al Alcorn for working under pressure.
That's pretty good, yeah.
And he just knows it, which is pretty crazy. I wish I could, take something apart and just fix it. You know
just,
what I mean?
real quick, put it back together.
Yeah, I could understand something that much. I don't understand anything, Tyler.
Let's build some computers. I'll show you.
You know computers well. You can take it apart. Do you think if I gave you a Home Pong machine from the 70s, you could rewire it and fix it?
I don't. No, absolutely
but do you think we can get to that point one day as podcast co-hosts?
Maybe. We may be able to get there someday with a lot of practice and a lot of discipline.
Just a lot of time spent in.
Yep.
Bushnell told Sears he could give them 75,000 units by Christmas, and Sears countered with, you're giving us 150,000.
He's like, oh, you want double?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bushnell actually lied, and he was like, yeah, we can do this, but he just said he knew he would have to borrow money and expand Atari once again, because they had that initial expansion where they had the warehouse they got and acquired, and now he's talking to venture capitalists. And do you want to talk about Don Valentine?
Don Valentine, the venture capitalist who Atari wanted to get to invest in them. So he jumped on the board of directors after he invested in them, and he got a bunch of other companies to invest to minimize his risk, because he's like, look, if I go down, I'm taking you guys with me. So there's Time Incorporated, the Mayfield Fund, Fidelity Venture Associates. So Atari at that point had $2.5-3.5 million they were making a year, but at this point they also had a $10 million line of credit because of the venture capitalists,
which helped them break through that 150,000 units.
Help them build up their supply chain and make sure that this could happen.
Yeah, the weird thing about it, so Valentine joined the board before everything was closed, and by the time the deal closed, they didn't actually need him anymore, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Because he had got all the other people.
Yeah, they got all the other people. They got the credit line, And then at that time, they decided to merge Key Games and Atari back together. Because if you remember from the last episode, Key Games and Atari were the same company.
And then they
split out to create their own competition, and they rejoined. And when they merged together, it made them strong enough to have a big enough balance sheet to get a loan from a bank. So they ended up asking Don for double the money because they knew they could do it now. And he accepted angrily. And he was on the board for 2 years, and he was really active in the company. Even though he didn't like the people that worked in the factory, I guess you could say Don Valentine was kind of old school.
Yeah.
He was like, it smells like marijuana in here. But he ended up leaving after 2 years, but I think he ended up all right, Tyler?
Yeah, his initial investment, well, he invested in a lot of things. He made a really big deal by investing in Cisco Systems, which is still like a networking company today. Like if you buy switches and routers for your large company, you're probably buying Cisco
also,
routers.
Like every office phone is a Cisco phone.
Yep, that's true. They actually had the trademark for iPhone before Apple did.
Really?
Yeah, there was a whole lawsuit there. That's a whole nother
episode.
That's a whole
nother episode, yeah. Interesting.
But he invested in Cisco. He invested $2.5 million in Cisco. And by the time he got out of there, he had $10 billion with a B. He was in the Tres Comas.
That is
club.
Crazy.
Yeah. That's so much money. I can't imagine having that much money.
I don't know what I would do with $10 billion.
$10 billion.
Okay, here's a little sidetrack. All right, if I had $10 billion, first thing I would do, pay off my debt.
For sure.
And then pay off all of my family debt, pay off some friends' debt. I would be like, hey, here we go. No one has student loans anymore. If you know me, your student loans no longer exist. Let me help you out.
Yeah.
Can you get a tax write-off for paying off someone else's student loan interest?
So here's how I would do that, is I would set up a charitable foundation and then donate to that charitable foundation that pays off people's student loans. There's a lot of legal framework there probably that you have to go through to make because I don't know if that's even legal, but that's how I would at least start researching it. And then so you could write off the charitable donation, and then that charity pays off the loans.
That's so smart.
That's probably how I'd do it.
That way. What would I do with that?
If that's legal. I actually don't know if that's legal. So
I feel like it's legal. It's more legal than other stuff people are doing.
Yeah.
Boom, politics. We hit there. We went there. Another thing about going back to Sears with Bushnell is his relationship with them was really bizarre. He made a new factory in Sunnyvale, California, and the Sears people would sometimes look around the assembly line, and he would like be there. Bushnell would be there, and he would be like riding down the assembly line in a cardboard box, like it was a ride. And the Sears people would just be looking at him like, "What is this guy doing?" And also, all Atari employees wore T-shirts and jeans, and all Sears employees would wear suits. So there was kind of this weird divide between the two companies.
you could always tell who the Sears folks were and who the
yeah.
Where I work at, we used to work in another building, and where like the place I work is like a lot of t-shirts and jeans, and we worked in another building with like bankers and stuff, and they were just on another floor. And so when you got into an elevator, it was like, yes, I can tell who works where by just looking at it. It's like suits and ties, like the bankers, and like a t-shirt and jeans are like us.
Yeah. I feel like all companies now are moving on to t-shirt and jeans. It's like, if you don't have clients, there's no reason for everyone to be dressed up all fancy.
Yeah.
Let them be comfortable.
It's just too much work.
Yeah, it's way too much work. Also, there was a funny thing that happened, though. Because both of them, like the Sears people and the Atari people, wanted to like get to know each other and wanted to make each other feel comfortable, they had this big dinner they planned. And the Atari people were like, hey, we're going to dress up. And
we're going to wear guys wear suits,
and
so
we're
like,
gonna look
we need
good.
to...
So we match them and we're all together. And then the Sears people are like, hey, we're going to wear t-shirts and jeans to try to...
These guys don't wear suits, so let's make them comfortable.
Yeah, so they actually did like a switcheroo. And they're like, okay, this is really weird. But it's nice because they were both trying.
Yeah,
they're both trying
it's a funny, mistake.
So in 1975, they actually filled... So this was like Atari's, one of their better years. Like they had no problem filling 150,000 units. Joe Keenan had taken over as the president of Atari, and because of that, Nolan Bushnell was like the CEO, I guess, but he didn't really have a lot to do.
Oh, well, I mean, that's kind of the way you want to do it, right? If you're properly setting up your leadership structure, if you don't have anything to do, that means you did it right?
I guess that's true, yeah. Like, if you don't, it should be, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you want to work yourself out of a job so that you can find more things to do.
Yeah, you get more free time. You can go...
more free time to design more games or do whatever you want.
Yeah, and actually, Nolan Bushnell had a little bit of a problem with this because he, I think, was one of those people that needed something to do. And so he would go around in different departments and kind of meddle in the affairs of them and be like, oh, you're doing that way, you try to do it this way. And as a result of that, in engineering, Al Alcorn, actually he's in R&D, sorry, Al Alcorn had a rule where if Bushnell asked an employee to do something, they only had to do it if he said it 3 times.
Trying to avoid the old swoop and poop, I call it.
Exactly.
Where the boss comes in and says, hey, you need to do some things differently, and then leaves.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
And then, if it did happen 3 times, then Al Alcorn, you'd have to go check in with him and be like, am I supposed to be doing this for sure? And it got to the point where he even had like a special beeper. Alcorn did. So if he was out of the office and then Bushnell showed up and Alcorn wasn't there, he had to speed over there real quick to like get him away.
Red alert, Bushnell's here.
Yeah. But Bushnell was smart and he found out about this. And so he had a spy in R&D.
Wow.
And you know who that spy was?
Who is that spy?
Steve Jobs.
The Steve Jobs?
The
Stephen P. Jobs?
Stephen P. Jobs. Is that his full name?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I actually don't know what the P stands for, but his name was Stephen P. Jobs.
Is it phone?
Yeah.
Probably phone.
Yes. Paul, actually. It's Stephen Paul Jobs, I think. I'm going to look that up right now.
You look that up real quick. So we're in 1976.
Yep. Yes.
It's Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, nice. The league, and then 1976 taught 2 big things happen. The first thing that happened was the legalization of pinball. And if you recall in the first episode, we kind of talked about this for a bit. Pinball was illegal because it was seen as gambling. And then it was legalized on Roger Sharp's birthday.
Refresh my memory who Roger Sharp
on
is.
August 1st, 1976. I believe that was the man who like actually did the pinball playing. Remember that?
Oh, the dude. The guy when they called him in and were like, look, you need to prove that this is a game of skill. And he's like, check it out.
Yeah, it was that guy. And he's like, boom, when he did it.
Yeah.
Boom, sir. Sound effects.
Yeah.
And that was on August 1st, 1976 that he legalized it by calling his shot.
Oh, yeah.
That was that thing. We're
Yep.
talking about it could be a Disney movie. The second thing that happened in 1976 was the first instance of violence in video games and some controversy with that.
Oh, man.
And that was XD Games, founded by former Ramtech executive Pete Kaufman, released a driving game called Death Race.
That sounds pretty violent.
Sounds pretty ominous. Do you want to talk about Death Race?
Yeah, so the first game they made was called Destruction Derby, and it was like players would take out, there were other cars, you were driving a car, and there were other cars in there that were like kind of moving this sort of like zigzag pattern, and they were controlled by the computer, and you would like try to like run into them or whatever. So when Chicago Coin bought that game, but then according to Kaufman, he never paid him his royalties, so that sucks. So Kaufman re-released the game and added skeletons that the player ran over, and then when they were like run over, little crosses would appear in their place, and so once it got out that there was some controversy here, the game, of course, became more popular because that's how that works. So yeah, only 1,000 of those games were sold by Exidy, which is like a small amount compared to games like Seawolf and Gunfight, the games that were made by Midway. But Death Race is the one that took all the flack. They were on CBS's 60 Minutes, that show.
Yeah, they were like pretty big. And it's interesting because I was trying to figure out like if they were so popular, why didn't they sell 1,000 games? And the reasoning was it was a popular machine if they had it, but so many people were afraid to have it in their bars because they're like, "There's controversy with this. We don't want to be we don't want to be the pizza place that has the Death Race game.
This bar is a place for children. Damn it."
Yeah, right. And when defending the game in public, Exidy spokespeople said the game was about killing demons, and they actually were skeletons, like demons. That's what they said it was. But in private, they knew like this is going to help us sell more games and get more publicity.
They knew what was up.
Yeah. Death Race 2 came out in 1977, and the game had the same gameplay where players ran over the stick figures, but even in Pete Kaufman was like, yeah, it's essentially the same game. We just like did some minor changes.
The first like rehash sequel.
Yeah. It was other people in the industry were nervous about it though. Like pinball being legalized and Death Race, they were worried it would like cause controversy because the pinball thing was like gambling and they didn't want that to come back. And Death Race, like I didn't know, Nolan Bushnell like spoke about it. He's like, I don't like Death Race because he doesn't like it. You shouldn't be killing people in games. Is what he thought. He's like, flying saucers are okay, tanks are okay, but not people. And that's kind of interesting to me because now
that's like all you do in most video games.
Yeah, you just kill electronic people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, That's
We're gonna have to get there eventually when we get to the current day.
Oh, when we get to the 90s, there's going to be a whole thing about the early 90s.
Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat, and Hillary Clinton's all in there trying to take away people's video games.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. That's going to be exciting.
Did you get to play Mortal Kombat as a kid?
No, my parents were very strict. You will play games that are rated age appropriately. So, like, I couldn't play teen-rated games until I was 13. I did, of course, at, like, friends' houses and stuff. So, but I never had them.
Halo was mature, right?
What?
Halo was mature.
Yep, and I didn't play it except at friends' houses.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with me, too. And then I remember the other one for me was Goldeneye. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember putting on Goldeneye and playing it with paintball mode on so my mom wouldn't get mad. Yeah. Like, it's just rainbows. It's fine.
In a game, if you could turn the blood off, that made her feel a lot better.
Yeah. So, even though, like, it really does anything.
Yeah.
We got plenty of time still. I think we can do Chapter 8.
You want to do Chapter 8?
Let's do Chapter 8. Okay.
Great.
Atari actually... So, now we're at the point where Home Pong's come out, and they sold all 150,000 units in the first season.
Wow.
So they did it.
They offered 75,000 units. Sears was like, you're going to give us 150K. And Atari was like, okay. And they expanded, delivered 150K, and then sold them all out.
Sold all of them.
Holy moly.
Yeah. But in 1976 now, they had more competition. The Jackals are back, as they would say. There were 75 other companies promised to release home tennis games to compete with Pong. Not all 75 ended up releasing them. It was just like people being like, we're going to have one too. And they announced them and they just never came out.
Did they not have any original ideas? They were like, we can do that also.
Yeah, I think that's just the way business works though. Like we can do it cheaper. And
yeah, okay. I mean, I guess that's competition.
Look at Fortnite, PUBG.
May the best ping pong game win.
Yeah. It was happening back then. It's still happening now. Magnavox actually released the Odyssey 100. But instead of playing 12 games, it just played Pong, which I thought was like a big step backward.
Was it cheaper than the original Odyssey?
It had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how they call it the Odyssey 100, like it's so much better.
Yeah, it's the 100, but it plays 11 less games. The biggest competitor for Atari, though, was the National Semiconductor Company. And they really became unfriendly with Atari during the Key Games fiasco. Like, they thought that Key Games was, like, better than Atari, not realizing.
Console wars.
Yeah, it was at the point that they stopped selling chips to Atari.
Wow.
But luckily, Steve Bristow, the engineer behind Tank, developed piggyback boards that had the same function as the chips. But so this saved Atari. Like, Steve Bristow actually worked at Key Games, but he was like, hey, you guys, I can help you out. I made this thing so we can move these over to Atari so we can still compete with each other. We can have our fake competition. Yeah. But National Semiconductor came out with a bad Pong game.
A bad one?
Yeah, like it was just not as good. Like the build quality was bad. It was just,
how do you mess up?
Yeah, it's weird because how would you mess it up? Like you could, I feel like you could just take a home Pong machine at this time, take it apart, reverse engineer it, and make your own.
Yeah,
make a minor
probably.
change.
Yeah, it's definitely that easy.
Yeah,
I know for sure.
Oh yeah, but Tyler and I are constantly taking apart iMacs and just selling them as our own.
Constantly reverse engineering Xbox Ones and just selling our own.
Yeah, that's why we call it the Tie Box 3000.
That's right.
Atari did try to throw a patent at them, though, because they were like, this is a blatant ripoff, and not only that, it's like really bad, but the patent in itself was bad, because remember before, when Nolan Bushnell hired that, he called him a lazy doofus lawyer? It just didn't work. Another big competitor came from the Connecticut Leather Company. They were known as Coleco.
Oh, I was like, Connecticut Leather Company.
Yeah. It was. I didn't know that's what their Coleco was from.
Makes sense. I just figured it was somebody's last name.
Yeah,
like
I thought it was too. It's an interesting Coleco.
Yeah, I like that name. I wish that they would make stuff still.
Yeah, maybe they'll come out with a Coleco. Whatever
Coleco Classic.
Classics,
like
yeah.
NES Classic.
Coleco was a family business. It was run by two brothers, Arnold and Leonard Greenberg, and Arnold made all the business decisions, essentially. But when they started in 1956, they made kits for leather crafts.
Hence the name.
Different from video games. That's what blows my mind about this whole thing.
All these companies did other things, like Nintendo made playing cards in the 1800s.
That's crazy.
Before they ever made video games. Yeah.
That's crazy. ColecoVision then got into plastic manufacturing, and they made equipment for above ground pools.
All right. So this is their fault.
Yeah,
above ground pools aren't their fault.
They're the reason that everyone loves above ground pools now, you know? But finally, they bought, 10 years later, Eagle Toys.
Okay.
And they decided to start entering the toy market by making tabletop hockey and football games, like the ones with the little sticks and the little guy. Like, it's like foosball
or air hockey.
It's kinda. Like hockey figure games. Yeah, kind of like that. And it had like the giant plexiglass dome above it. You remember those ones?
Nice.
Those ones, yeah. And in 1975... Arnold Greenberg decided they should get into the home video game business.
Probably a good choice.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you might as well. Like, everyone's doing it.
Yeah. Jump on the bandwagon.
Jump right on it. They called their tennis game the Telestar.
That's cool.
Yeah. They have really good names. Coleco.
That's a neat name.
And they ordered all their chips from the General Instrument Company, which was the company that most other video game companies ordered chips from at the time.
So they're the real winners.
They are the real
General
winners.
Instrument.
General Instrument really was doing well at this time. But Coleco was the only company that got all of their chips ordered. Because remember at this time, I said 75 companies wanted to make tennis games. They all ordered from this company, but Coleco just happened to fill their order first.
Nice.
So they just got their chips where everyone else didn't get their chips.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's probably contributes heavily to like why they were more successful than any of those other companies too.
Yeah, it's just chance, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Telestar thing in the FCC?
So the Telestar had a problem passing with the FCC. They do like an interference thing. FCC is trying to make sure the radio waves don't get clogged up. And the Telestar generated like a whole lot of interference, which is a real problem because they weren't able to sell it if it was generating all that interference. So Greenberg had he had a week to fix it, basically. If they couldn't get this fixed by Friday, then it was going to move back to the bottom of the line for FCC inspection. And it was going to take forever for them to get certified, and then they would miss Christmas, which is a real big time. So what they did was they hired a former Sanders Associates chief engineer, Ralph Baer, the Magnavox Odyssey guy. They hired him to fix the problem. So they agreed to help if Greenberg agreed to sign the contracts that they had with Sanders Associates. So they were making some deals, and Ralph Baer was like, "Hey, I'll do this for you if you go through on this deal with us." So once they signed those agreements, Baer went to work. He didn't get it the first day, but when he came into work the next morning, he found a ferrite ring that choked radio signals. He created a shield out of that, which made the Telestar pass the RFI tests.
Yeah, and it was very much by chance, too. I think he was just like some other department was working on this thing, and he was like, oh, well, I could use that.
Yeah, and you see ferrite cores on stuff still. Like if you have like a cable for, sometimes headphones have them, or like USB cords will have them, those little like plastic things that are like near the plug. That's a ferrite core, and it's for reducing interference.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. You can buy them too if you have cable interference problems. You can clip them on your cable.
Tyler, I learned so much from you. What a great little piece of information.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Ferrite cores. That's what they're called.
Yeah, the Telstar came out on Father's Day, 1976, because dads love ping pong. And they sold over $100 million worth of consoles.
Holy moly.
And rose to the top of the consumer game business. They overshadowed Atari.
Wow.
But this was short-lived because a console released by the Fairchild Camera and Instrument Company, again, these are random companies, it changed the game forever. They released a company called Channel F, which they used because they kind of changed the game with transistors, and this was the first console that used that. And the Channel F was different because they had a controller with triangle handles, and it looked like a bomb detonator. That's what they said they described it as. But most important, they had cartridges, interchangeable game cartridges. The Channel F, it all started here.
Oh, man.
This is the first company with cartridges. I'm so excited we got here.
Yeah, me too. Because up till this point, all of the home consoles would play either just one game, or they would have like a set of games. You'd like flip switches basically to access the other games.
Yeah, the Magnavox Odyssey had the interchangeable games by switching out circuit boards.
Yeah.
And so the Channel F, The cartridge, they called it a video cart, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It contained a separate microchip with the game programmed onto it, and they looked kind of like 8-track tapes.
Yeah, and this is really cool because you could buy a console and then games could be made later for that same console.
Yeah.
You didn't have to buy a new console to play a new game.
Exactly. This kind of revolutionized the whole business of video games with selling games and a console had a lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
So while the Channel F wasn't like super successful, every other video game company was like, this is an amazing idea.
Yeah.
Why are we not doing this? It's kind of weird because the Channel F, I feel like, got kind of thrown to the wayside of history because they didn't do well financially, but they changed the game completely.
So it's a good instance of, it really is all about the games, right? You can, if you have technically better hardware, that's great, and that will help you make better games, but if you don't have the games, you're not going to win.
I think, yeah, it's kind of like a couple episodes ago when we were talking about how the guy was like, you don't sell the razor blade handle, you sell the razors. Like the handle's the console and the razors are the games. And you just sell the games. So RCA and Magnavox immediately saw the Channel F and were like, we're working on a new console now. And Atari said that they developed a new computer chip named after a bicycle, which I thought was interesting. And we're going to get there, but it's in a second. The Home Pong pretty much was useless now that the cartridges came out with the Channel F and the Coleco. Like the Telstar just destroyed Home Pong. It was just not interesting enough to hold a customer's attention and only had one game.
It's a pretty good game.
It was a good game.
But, you can only play Pong for so long before you're tired.
Exactly. You get tired of it. So Bushnell said he wanted to make essentially a home computer you plugged into your television and would display information on the screen, like a straight up, we're talking modern console kind of thing going on. So he went to his favorite place in the world, Grass Valley.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. And he found help in a guy named Steve Mayer. And I'm going to read the quote right now about Steve Mayer. And this is in the book. And Al Alcorn says this. Steve Mayer, quote, Steve Mayer, brilliant man, basically solved the problem. And you're talking about the chips here. All the other companies were run by semiconductor companies that made them use memory map as a frame buffer. We didn't want a frame buffer. Back in those days, it was way too expensive. We wanted to find a way to make the system with minimum silicon. The other companies' video games were all done by semiconductor companies. We were the only one that did our own design. And this is important because they're about to completely change the way it was all done. And what they did is they took MOS Technologies, made a chip called the MOS Technologies 6502 General Purpose Microprocessor. And Steve Mayer took that chip and built off of it. So they built their own microchip, essentially, for their games. And it was designed, and the custom chip was named Stella after an engineer's bicycle.
Oh, there you go.
Which is weird that the guy named his bicycle.
Well,
but then again, my car's name is Edith, so who am I to judge?
Yep.
Do you have a name for your car?
I actually don't.
We should look into that.
I should. The 6502 is huge because it's in all kinds of stuff. Like the Apple II runs off of 6502. Like basically any computer or game console that was sort of worth anything ran off the 6502.
And that would make sense because this is around the time Steve Jobs left too.
Yeah.
So I think it was just interesting because I think, this Steve Mayer guy just took a chip and completely changed how they create video game consoles. Harold Lee advised to manufacture the Stella Chip, and there was only one guy that could do the job. An expert at Cinertech named Jay Miner. He was the chief microprocessor designer, and he'd already worked on custom chips for Atari. And Al Alcorn asked if they could hire Miner as a consultant for Atari, but he could still work at Cinertech. And they said yes, which is good. He said yes, because if not, it wouldn't happen. And the Stella development team was Miner, a mathematician named Larry Wagner, and an engineer named Joe DeCuir? I think it's DeCuir.
DeCuir?
DeCuir.
It's a neat name.
You can find your own pronunciation. It is a cool name. And apparently the fun story about Miner, about him working there, is he would bring his cockapoo into work, his dog, and they'd hang out with the dog, which I thought was nice. They had that little fun little anecdote that was added in.
Gotta have that office dog.
Yeah, that's right. But the final product was the video computer system, the VCS.
Mm-hmm.
And Mayer's idea about using the 6507 microprocessor was correct. The VCS was not only a game machine, but essentially a computer with an 8-bit processor that played games.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, and so this is cool because now Bushnell's like, I got something, and to avoid the jackals, the people that are stealing from me, I'm going to have a surprise release of this console. I'm not going to tell anyone about it. And in 1976 was the year that electromechanical games were declared extinct by the vice president of Empire Entertainment, Joe Robbins. And Atari would be in the lead if Joe Robbins was correct, because Atari did have some other competition with like games, but they were pretty much done with ping pong.
Yeah.
I mean, not ping pong, pinball. They were done with ping pong also, but they were done with like pinball and other old games like that. They're like, we're all about video games now. There were some other games though that were coming out at this time. Do you want to talk about those real quick?
Yeah, Midway had a game called Sea Wolf. They took that from a similar Japanese game made by a Japanese video game company called Sega, which we will get to in the future, I'm sure. Sega! In Sea Wolf, players actually controlled a periscope to destroy ships. So slower ships were worth less points, and the faster ones were worth more points. So he's kind of destroying ships and stuff. The problem was, in 1976, the novelty of playing games on a TV screen had worn off, which is crazy to think of now, because I play games on my TV screen every day.
Yeah.
So people were just kind of sick of it. They were tired of it because the games were all very similar, and they were just sick of it. So because of this, pinball games had like a small comeback in 1976. So it was like a perfect storm. People were kind of tired of playing games on their TV, and pinball being legal meant there's a bit of a resurgence there. So yeah, and this was a lot of this was due to pinball machines now having the solid state technology that let them keep high scores.
Yeah,
which is a pretty big deal.
Bars. And that was so like Joe Robbins, that guy that predicted before that Atari would be in the, like that electromechanical machines were dead, was kind of wrong. And it's good because I said Atari was pulling away from pinball machines, but they still had that division that was extra wide pinball machines. So they like still kind of had a little bit of business with that. But it was around this time that Steve Jobs left Atari, 1976. So he left to work on Apple computers right when that microprocessor, the 6502.
So he knew it was up.
He knew what was going on. And then it was also around this time that Bushnell had to make a choice about his company. So he had to choose to either make Atari go public or sell it to a bigger company. And he held a board meeting and decided that going public would be a bad choice because their shares were going down already because they made the VCS, but it's not wanted right now, and they have this smaller pinball division that's like keeping them afloat, but it's not doing really well. So they shopped Atari around. They shopped it around to MCA, which was a parent company of Universal Studios and Disney at the time, which is crazy to think that at one time Disney had a parent company.
Yeah, and they were sister companies with Universal Studios.
Yeah, which is just really weird to think about that. And they were not interested. But Warner Communications was interested in buying Atari. And they had a little bit of everything. They had like film recording and magazine publication. They were just kind of a media company.
They just had just tons. They were a company that owned other companies, basically.
Yeah. And their owner, Steve Ross, sent Manny Gerard, who was considered to be the best like entertainment analyst in the industry, to check out Atari's facilities. And he was, after speaking with Bushnell and touring the facility, he felt like Atari could only go up from there. Like he was like, "Oh, this company's great. Like it's growing.
You guys are at rock bottom."
Yeah, you're at rock bottom right now. But hey, I think we could do something with this. But Gerard told Steve Ross he should buy Atari. And Ross was actually kind of already interested after taking his family to Disneyland and playing an Indy 800 arcade game, which Gerard suspected helped like sweeten the deal for Ross to buy it. Like he's got video games on the brain.
Video games are great. I would like to make some myself.
Yeah. And Steve Ross's lawyers met with Atari and they hashed out a deal. The deal though was almost ruined because of Nolan Bushnell's ex-wife found out about his infidelity, so that he had to settle with his ex-wife first out of court before the deal could be finalized, because otherwise she would have part ownership of the company within Warner. Oh, no. It was like this weird legal thing. Yeah, they had to figure that out. The deal didn't go through.
Oh, yikes.
But in the end, Warner Communications bought Atari for $28 million, which in 2017 was $122,572,150.96.
So, a lot of money.
A lot of money, yeah. And Warner was cool, and they left the original board members intact, and Bushnell was still the chairman, and Joe Keenan was still the president.
Oh, nice. So they got to sell to a large company, make a bunch of money, and still get to run the business.
Yeah.
That's good.
Also, I got a little confused here. I should clarify that the they didn't like we're right now right before the console's release.
Mm-hmm. The VCS.
So, yeah, right before the VCS release. So pinball is going to come back. They haven't released the VCS yet. They're kind of in between. Like, should we be working on pinball right now, or should we be working on the VCS? Like, what should we be doing? So it's kind of a rocky time right now for Atari. And they got off to a kind of a weird start, first because of a fun incident that happened where Warner execs went on Nolan Bushnell's boat in a cruise around the Bay Area in California, and they hit a buoy, and they were worried their boat was going to sink.
Oh, no.
That's how they got started.
Yikes.
Not a good business start out.
No.
But the consoles began to come out in 1977. You want to talk about that, Tyler?
Yeah, so RCA came out with their Studio 2 in January. It also had interchangeable cartridges, but a serious design flaw. The games are all in black and white, which by this time, it's not going to fly. Not cool anymore.
Color TV, it's all there now.
Yep. Magnavox released the Odyssey 2 in September of 1977, and then Leisure and Bally also released new systems.
Yeah.
Allied Leisure. Is that the name of the company?
Yeah, Allied Leisure. I know.
Allied Leisure.
Yeah, it sounds like leisure, but you're really tough with it while you're doing it. Like, we're all going to be together while we relax.
So they also released new systems. But at this point, in October of 1977, the VCS was released along with 9 game cartridges. So similar to the Channel F, the VCS had like dial controllers, but this one also came with a joystick. This wasn't the first joystick that ever existed, but it came with the system, so it was a big deal. The first joysticks were created by German scientists in World War II to control guided missiles.
But Atari's like, you know what? We can bring the joystick back.
Yeah, we can make this happen.
World War II. It's been 30 years. Let's do this.
Not too soon.
No, not too soon at all. The profit margin on the VCS was pretty low. The executives wanted to make up for it with the cartridges, again, like the razors, and sell the blades. You know what's funny is that definitely is written in our notes here, and I think this is the first time I've said that, and I'm just thinking because I've been reading so much about it, I'm getting it confused with stuff. But one of the they sold the VCS for $30, sorry, and it cost them $10 to manufacture. So they're only making $20 per console.
That seems like a lot of money per thing being sold anyway, but I guess I don't really know.
Is it a 300% profit?
Yeah. I guess I don't really know how business works.
200% profit. I don't know how business works either. But this was the first time in the video game industry they used the give away the razors so that you can sell the blades tactic. That still is around today. Like, I think Microsoft and PlayStation don't make any money off their consoles.
Yeah, usually they lose money for a long time. If they may, by now they might be in 2018, but I know usually when a console comes out, they lose money and they're just like, well, let's make it up selling games.
Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, this is where it started. And one of the main problems the VCS had was shipping. Atari couldn't get all 400,000 consoles on store shelves in time for Christmas because after 1977, Christmas 1977, the video game market crashed.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Magnavox and Atari sold inventory at reduced rates, and RCA quit the video game business completely. They just left after their one console.
Yeah, there's several crashes in the early history of video games.
Yeah, I think it's like, because, again, I think at this point it's looked at as more of a fad than like a thing that's going to be around for a while, because now video games are a big, titan business, but back then it was like, oh, cool, you can play games on your television. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go back to being outside. It was at this point that Bushnell also started to pull away from Atari's day-to-day operations. He got into real estate, and he bought a giant mansion in Woodside, California, formerly owned by coffee heir Peter Folger.
Oh, the best part of waking up.
Folgers in your mansion. Atari sales were steady but not great in 1978, and Nolan wanted to ditch the VCS and start with a new generation of console. He didn't like the idea of refining what you have because he felt your competition would catch up with you, and this was kind of his like thought process behind the whole Jackals thing. He called the idea "eating your own babies." By the way, very subtle.
That's a great image.
Yeah, so it's kind of this weird thing happening now in 1978, where it's like Warner versus Bushnell. And it started in February 1978 when Warner hired a consultant to help turn around Atari named Ray Kassar. He was the former vice president of Burlington Industries. He also went to Harvard and was the youngest VP in Burlington history. And he was described by people as liking tailored suits, fancy meals, and being chauffeured around in limousines, which is not Atari. Not at all.
That is the opposite of Atari.
Yeah. He even said he knew nothing about video games, But after testing the VCS, he said it had promise and he could make Atari a profitable company again. And do you want to talk about them button heads?
Yeah, so they definitely butted heads. Kassar got there at 7:30 in the morning, and Nolan wore T-shirts that said, "I like to screw." So, like, there's a difference there. Like, Kassar's like, "I'm going to wake up early and come into work," and Nolan's not doing that. Their biggest disagreement was that Kassar wanted to make the VCS the main component of the Christmas lineup, and Bushnell was like, "No, we done. The VCS is out.
He's
We
like,
done
I
with
wanna
that."
get rid of this thing.
Yeah. So the final battle was at a budget meeting in November of 1978. Nolan Bushnell stood up and said that they should just get rid of the pinball division, drop the VCS price, and then try to sell the software for profit. Gerard and Kassar just felt like Bushnell didn't care anymore. They thought that was a terrible idea, and he's clearly off his rocker.
And he's also, like, Bushnell at this point was very much like, even though pinball was seeing a resurgence in the late 70s, early 80s, he's like, this is not what I want to do. This is not the thing I want at this time. Like, I want to do... he's kind of one of those guys that I think wanted to keep evolving the industry. Like, he wanted to keep creating new stuff because that's what drove him. And I don't think he really cared about the business thing anymore at this point.
Yeah.
So what happened was Gerard had a private meeting with Steve Ross after that budget meeting in November 1978, where they essentially gambled everything on selling the VCS for Christmas, like really pushing the VCS. After the meeting, Gerard returned to California and learned that Nolan Bushnell held a board meeting without any Warner representation.
Yikes.
Which is a big no-no.
Yeah, but I should have done that.
Yeah. So Gerard got a lawyer and dismissed Bushnell from Atari. Joe Keenan also left after Bushnell was sent to the beach, as they called it. In quotes, yeah.
Forced retirement.
Yeah, exactly. Bushnell and Keenan could still make money while on the beach, though. They would still collect bonuses if Atari did well. Unfortunately, this also meant that Bushnell was knocked out of the video game industry for 7 years because he had a non-compete clause in his contract.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Kassar replaced Bushnell as the CEO of Atari, and people started leaving because no one had any confidence in this guy that did textile sales.
Oh, yeah.
So
been there. That's an Apple thing, too. That happened.
Really?
In Apple, yeah. When John Scully joined up, because he was, like, originally from Pepsi.
Oh.
And they were like, this guy is used to selling
soda.
So
it's really interesting that if you're an executive, then your job is just be an executive, no matter what the company you're working for, what the product they sell or anything. Like, you're just an executive guy. That's really crazy to me.
Yeah, that's nuts. And the fact that people can get, like they call it, sent to the beach, where it's like, we're still going to pay you. We just need you to not do anything here.
Yeah.
Because the perceived damage you are causing outweighs the amount of money we're paying you. So just let us pay you and then just go do nothing.
Yeah, which is interesting because Nolan had already kind of a side project at this time. And I didn't know this. I didn't know this thing at all. And this is where we're going to stop for today. The Nolan's other business, once Warner bought Atari, Nolan founded Chuck E. Cheese. And I didn't know this at all about him at all. Like, did you know this?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, this is where we leave off, is Nolan started Chuck E. Cheese, the kids' arcade.
Still going strong.
Yeah, and that's where we're going to leave it. And I
creepy
think
animatronic.
the creepy animatronic dancing.
Yeah.
The Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh, yeah.
I never played that game. It looked too scary.
It's very scary, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I've played briefly. It's not
a fan. not a fan of being scared. But anyway, that was next week. We'll get into the return of Nolan Bushnell, because he does make a triumphant return. So
return.
And we're gonna start there next week. But anyway, what you been playing? Well, we've been playing something.
Well, we've been playing. So I played since. So there's been a significant gap in time between the recording of episode 3 and 4. So I'm playing a lot of different games. I played the first 3 games in the Splinter Cell series, finished them, loving it. I will play the next 3 games as well, but I'm taking a little bit of a Splinter Cell break to play Destiny 2 because Warmind expansion came out, and I haven't played Destiny since like December, and I'm having a lot of fun.
I'm having a lot of fun too.
It's so good.
I'm even like, because Tyler's got it good. He's got some people he plays with, which is nice. But I've been playing it as a solo guy, trying to like find LFG raid teams on Xbox, and it's working. Like I am getting raid teams. Granted, the raids still take like 3 hours.
Yeah,
but it's still fun.
Even when you know the people you're playing with, they still take 3 hours. The reason Mike and I don't play together is because I play on PC. He plays on Xbox. Otherwise, we would totally play it together.
I mean, I want to do everything I can to just buy a gaming PC right now, but I don't have the money, unfortunately.
Well, when this podcast takes off, That'll be the first thing you can get.
We'll be playing Destiny 3 day one together.
Yes.
Also, though, another thing that we've been doing that's pretty cool is Tyler and I have been playing Halo 3 and 4 co-op together.
Yep.
Like, I bring my Xbox over, and then I put it on a different TV, and we play 3-player co-op.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of fun with that. We finished 4. We finished Halo 3. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I also finished Halo 5 on my own because it doesn't have split screen co-op, so I didn't play with friends.
You've been really wrecking that library. I love it.
I played Halo Reach also. I've played through all of that.
You're inspiring.
Yeah. Well, I've got my board now that keeps track of all the games I'm trying to play, and it's really.
Can you tell them about this? This is a really good idea.
Yeah. So I'm using a service right now called Trello, where basically you can set up. It's kind of like a thing for agile companies that they use to like keep track of the things they're doing, like a ticketing system. Like if you've ever used Jira or Favro, it's a similar concept. But I'm using it to keep track of all the games I want to play. So I have a list of games that are in my like, these are the games I want to play. I have a list of games in an on deck category that are like, these are the next games that I'm playing, and this is the order I'm playing them in. Then I keep track of the ones I'm currently playing, and then I have a nice little list on the far right. That's all games that I finished. And when I finish a game, I can just drag it over to the finished, and it's working really well. And it keeps me focused on clearing my backlog, because I know a lot of people out there have a similar problem with me, and they got a big old backlog of video games to get through. So it's helping me clear out my backlog, and it's very satisfying to see, oh yeah, I'm playing through these. So
and then move it over. It's gotta feel so
move it over. I can share it. I'll send you the link. You can put it in the show notes if people want to look at my board.
Ooh, yeah, I'll do that.
You can like keep track of it. Yeah, it's cool.
Let's do it. You can look at Tyler's show notes, his board in the show notes.
Yeah,
his Trello board.
Trello board. Yeah.
All right, cool. That's good. I feel pretty good about the episode. We got a lot done. This is a big episode.
This is a meaty one. Yeah, we got through 2 chapters, 2 meaty chapters, so that's good.
So, and it's only gonna get meatier, team.
Hey.
It looks like we got some more stuff coming up. It's gonna be fun. But thank you so much for listening, and we love you. I think we can say that, right? You love them, I love them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we love you, and say bye, Tyler.
Bye, Tyler.